The lamest way to get in trouble. So.
We have your back for it.
Appreciate that, Councilmember Adams. Welcome to the Tempe City Council work study session in the Harry E. Mitchell Government Center. The time is now 4:19 p.m. It's Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. Members of the public who attend the meeting physically will be asked to maintain distance between other parties, and masks will be required for all attendees per City of Tempe policy. Alternatively, members of the public may attend the meeting virtually through Cisco WebEx events by visiting tempe.gov/clerk for more information. Council meetings can also be watched in real time via Cox Cable Channel 11 and at tempe.gov/tempe11. Since we are holding this council meeting in a hybrid in-person virtual format, please be patient if we encounter any technical issues. Item number 1 is call to the audience. The City Council welcomes public comment at this time for items listed under Section 2, Issue Review Session Items, and Section 4, Committee of the Whole items on this work study session agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. And I know we've got quite a few comment cards and speakers for item 4B, so we're going to take speakers and comment cards at the beginning of each agenda item for tonight's meeting. So let's go ahead here and do item 2 here, issue review session items. Item 2A is the Climate Action Plan update. Just really quickly, I wanted to say thank you very much to our external partners for being here today. I know we had to delay this presentation a few weeks ago, so we sincerely appreciate your time and patience, partnership, and commitment to this initiative. Just wanted to let you know it's extremely valuable and definitely much appreciated. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and call upon Dr. Braden Kay, our Sustainability Director, Andy Escobar, our Communications Fellow, and Denise Hart, the CEO for the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. But I see just Braden here, so I guess, Braden, it's on you.
Our partners will come up in a sec. Braden Kay,
Right.
Sustainability Director. So tonight we're going to be presenting on 418, our community carbon neutrality goal. Next slide, please. So our climate action plan, you'll remember we passed our first climate action plan in 2019, focused on emissions reduction, predominantly in our energy and transportation systems, as well as developing a holistic strategy to resilience to extreme heat. This update is an opportunity to do 3 things. We have developed stakeholder-focused agendas, which will be what we discussed this evening. And then we'll be coming back to you in February to discuss new greenhouse gas inventories that we've done both for our city operations and community-wide, as well as updated policy, program, and infrastructure recommendations coming out of these updates. We did a listening phase to help us define what was going to be in this update. What we heard is that residents and businesses really wanted to have their ideas in front of the mayor and council. And so we've designed a process where we have these 4 agendas that you're about to see tonight. And then starting now, we'll be finishing that up, a review process, and then approval, hopefully sometime this late winter, early spring. Next slide. So the business agenda was conducted with the Tempe Chamber of Commerce and Local First Arizona. And then the youth agenda was done by fellows that were hired by our office. The climate justice agenda was done in an innovative partnership with local nonprofit Unlimited Potential. And then the neighborhood agenda was done with our office, as well as with the course from ASU that came and presented to you last spring. So each agenda contains new actions that these stakeholder groups want to take on, partnerships that they believe that the city should be helping invest in, as well as how they want to contribute to the 4 existing highlight actions that our council committee has been working on. And with that, I'll hand it over to Denise.
Welcome, Denise.
Thank you. Should I leave my mask on, or can I take it off to speak? Or?
Well, whichever you're more comfortable with.
Okay. So good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Denise Hart. I'm the interim President and CEO of the Tempe Chamber of Commerce. I'm grateful for the opportunity to partner with the Sustainability Office and Local First Arizona on the business agenda. This work has been guided by the Sustainability Committee at the Chamber and represents perspectives from the business community on how we can partner on climate action in Tempe. There's an opportunity for businesses to save money while growing Arizona's clean energy economy, and we look forward to working with the city in that direction. Next slide, please. The businesses that we listened to highlighted 2 key areas to continue our work on energy efficiency and water conservation. There's an important opportunity to partner with SRP and APS on cost savings, including rebates, retro commissioning, training, and energy audits. Businesses told us they need more information and resources to save money. There is a clear opportunity for businesses to save money while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Tempe businesses were also interested in the opportunity to work on water conservation efforts. Reducing water use also contributes to emissions reduction. We deeply appreciate the water conservation program for businesses that the Tempe Municipal Utilities Department currently offers, and we believe that there is further work that Tempe businesses can do to utilize these resources. Next slide, please. We also heard from businesses about the importance of continued support from partnerships. Businesses need programs like the Sustainability Pledge at the Chamber of Commerce, and Tempe is the only chamber in the United States that has that Sustainability Pledge, so we're proud about that. And also Local First Arizona Sustainability Certification to support incorporating sustainability and climate action into their practices. We have learned more about how to improve our communications and programs in order to meet Tempe businesses' needs. Next slide, please. We also heard interest in the opportunity for businesses to collaborate with Tempe in increasing transportation options in the city. The Mobility Hubs concept of providing multiple transportation options in a single area presents opportunities for economic development and improving employees' commutes. Mobility hubs are a critical part of the transportation demand management, which allows for collaboration between the city and businesses on how to address traffic and embrace alternative transportation options. Cul-de-sac Tempe is interested in being one of the first mobility hubs in the city. They're a great example of how we can support creating a more multimodal city and piloting the mobility hub concept. We are collaborating to allow convenient and accessible transportation options that will make Tempe more livable and economically vibrant. Next slide, please. As you've heard from us today, the agenda includes energy efficiency and water conservation actions, the desire to grow partnerships, and interest from the business community to work on mobility hubs. We understand climate action is an ongoing work. We are excited to collaborate with you, and we appreciate you listening to our voice and understanding how we want to participate in this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Andy Escobar, a Sustainability Communications Fellow. I will be presenting the climate justice and the youth agendas. The youth agenda was created by high school students, recent college graduates, and community members who work with Tempe youth. Next slide. As for actions, youth expressed a desire to address equity issues around food and transportation. Under food equity, youth want to see school food programs that bring in composting and gardening sites on school campuses and lower the cost of school meals. For the larger Tempe community, youth want healthy food to be accessible and affordable across all income levels and increase urban agriculture programs. There's also a deep interest in transportation and making sure transit is affordable and accessible, that we are providing shading and water at transit centers and bus stops, and that we continue to work on accessibility issues. Next slide. There was also an interest in making sure school boards and leaders are a part of climate action. There is an opportunity for school boards to pass climate action resolutions and involve students in climate action decisions. There's also an opportunity to create school programs that bring climate change education into the classroom as part of the curriculum. We have a Cool Kids grant where employees from the Sustainability Office are working with McClintock High School students to advance extreme heat resilience across target neighborhoods. And Richard Atkins' project, the Climate Sensitive Urban Forestry Grant, is also working on planting trees in Tempe Elementary and Tempe Union schools. And that's another example of how these school programs integrate climate action in schools. In terms of the existing highlight actions, youth were interested in increasing green stormwater infrastructure across school campuses. There's an interest in making sure campuses are mitigating the urban heat island effect, practicing water conservation, and providing shade. Riley Elementary in Texas was used as our best practice example and was received positively in our youth forums. Next slide. In conclusion, these are the actions, partnerships, and highlight actions of this agenda. Next slide. As for the climate justice agenda, we selected Unlimited Potential, who has been working in target neighborhoods to make sure that we are working on addressing inequitable effects of climate change and climate injustices. Next slide, thank you. Participants of this agenda were concerned about heat awareness and energy. They believe that investments need to be made in homes, including upgrading living spaces, incentivizing natural and clean energy, promoting water conservation, increasing native vegetation, as well as working with utility companies on their electricity billing. In terms of community work, there is an opportunity to mobilize neighborhood action and support unsheltered persons in Tempe. Next slide, thank you. There was also an interest in land stewardship. Some of this includes the indigenization of Tempe, meaning we are acknowledging colonization and integrating indigenous knowledge into our climate action work. There's also an interest in the land back movement, the idea that there are opportunities to have more indigenous ownership of the land here in Arizona. In terms of the implications land stewardship has for urban forestry and sustainable landscapes, they include increasing tree canopy, promoting backyard gardens, and regenerative agriculture, as well as planting native vegetation. Next slide. As for the type of partnership we have with Unlimited Potential, residents felt that there is an opportunity for the city to continue to hire community-based organizations to do more work in responding to climate change and climate justice inequities, supporting energy and resilience needs, and facilitating the relationship between the city and residents. Next slide. This group was interested in one of our existing highlight actions, which is Resilience Hubs and Resilient Energy Hubs. Envision Tempe, a pilot project of human services, is an important investment the city is making for the community. This investment includes providing resources that prepare residents on how to respond to emergencies, as well as provide shelter during times of emergency. This project would also provide services that target residents who need additional access to services and address economic inequality in our city. This is a critical partnership with Fire Medical Rescue and the emergency manager to provide additional outreach to residents. Next slide. In conclusion, these are the actions, partnerships, and highlight action of this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy. Really appreciate it. Braden?
And then with the neighborhood agenda, we created this agenda both with ASU and the engagements that we did last spring, as well as some forums this summer. Next slide. There was a real interest in us continuing to work on resilience to extreme heat in terms of energy programs, transportation, urban cooling, as well as supporting the work of human services and housing solutions. With community-based organizations, same idea that we just heard from Andy, this idea that we can be working with neighborhoods and community-based organizations to really do authentic and deep listening. There's an opportunity to do this in the transportation space, as well as with heat relief and green jobs. Next slide. And then there's also an interest in us continuing to work on resilient energy hubs, resilient hubs, and eventually having a master plan for doing resilient energy hubs across the city. Next slide. So in conclusion here, resilience to extreme heat, working with community-based organizations, and then continuing to expand beyond Envision Tempe as our first pilot project to offer those services more widely across the city. Next slide. So in terms of next steps, we're working on this draft plan. We'll be coming back to you this winter with an updated greenhouse gas emissions inventory, as well as CIP and supplemental budget recommendations for how we can further implement our climate action work here in Tempe. And then there'll be an opportunity later this winter for final approval. In April, you'll have the opportunity to review and consider proposed budget supplementals. And then ongoing, the Sustainability and Livability Committee is going to continue to bring you policies and programs related to this work. You'll have the opportunity to continue to invest in infrastructure that supports this. And then we'll be continuing to do community engagement with neighborhoods and youth that you heard about today. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Let me first go to anyone who's on the phone right now. Council, anyone want to make any comments or have any questions?
Sure, I will, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Councilmember Cubie?
Thank you, Braden, and thank you, Andy, and thanks, Don, to your presentations. And just a couple comments in the business section. It's such a pleasure to see Local First Arizona and the Chamber of Commerce contributing to the climate action planning. I think it's important. You know, if we just had one or the other, there'd be such gaps in our planning and the reality of what we could accomplish and in the vision of what we want to do. So thanks so much. I'm really pleased to see that we all know that all hands must be on deck, and there's a great opportunity to come together. And it doesn't always involve a return on investment, because we know these investments can be an increased engagement and unquantifiable benefits. But we also know that through energy efficiency programs, we can get 26% of the way there towards our 100% goal as a government, and certainly as a community. So thank you so much, Dawn. Appreciate your deep involvement, and Suki's deep involvement on the Sustainability Commission. And then as far as the Youth Commission, the youth involvement goes, I'm so pleased for the deep-seated engagement here. Braden, it's been a pretty incredible year, because it's been 7 months of engagement with the public and with youth and the climate justice folks and neighborhoods and businesses, like 7 months of engagement, and then 10 months of planning. So you leave no stone unturned, and I'm so appreciative of that. It's sort of a model for how climate action plans should be run. And I know that other cities in Arizona reach out to you saying, how do we do this? So, thank you so much. The youth agenda and looking at their equity approach and food related to food and transportation, knowing that these young people are so wise in defining the social determinants of health and defining sustainability, not just as wastewater and energy, but as something much larger than that. And that is the equity principle and practices. And, I think I'm the oldest member of the council, and I know that the decisions we make today and tomorrow will impact those generations more deeply than they'll impact all of us on the council, no matter our ages. The young people are so deeply impacted by the decisions we're going to make related to climate action. So I'm so appreciative of all the involvement that we've had. And I just want to mention with the partnerships, one thing I think you left off, and to your credit, I know how deeply involved you've been with Phoenix and their heat response and mitigation department, and the work of David Hondula and all the community activists like Ginger Torres as well. But knowing, I was in a conference or meeting today, and there was a lot of kudos given to Braden Kay for his help with the Office of Heat Response and Mitigation. And I know we're going to learn a lot from Phoenix's investment, and I think some of that will be due to the work that you do, Braden. So thank you for that. I'm forward to the final approval of the climate action plan, and know that we'll breathe life into that plan, and it won't be a static document. And I just want to say thank you to all those that are involved, and couldn't be more appreciative of the time and energy and passion and inspiration that you bring to the task. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Any other council members on the phone want to add any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the wonderful presentation. Very informative. I was quite impressed with our City Chamber of Commerce being the first chamber in the country to have a sustainability plan. That is really awesome, and something that I think we need to really promote. I wasn't aware of that until tonight, so that's super exciting. I love all the partnerships that we have with everyone. That is how to get things done. I love how we're involving the entire community, not just us telling the community what to do. We're bringing the whole community in. Braden, you're doing a great job with that and getting a holistic approach on it. I like our model that we have moving forward. And I'm excited about the resilience plans throughout the city, that the energy hubs and those, so people will be able to go everywhere throughout the city and be able to, have their communication, their garden and water and all of that, and have our solar power. So that's super exciting. And I also want to appreciate the fact that you brought up the mosquito problem. That's really become a problem in our city, and I get a lot of complaints from constituents about it. So I'm really glad that we're addressing that, because that truly is part of our livable community, and making sure that we're not getting attacked by mosquitoes when we're outside. I believe that the state number is 67 deaths from mosquitoes from West Nile virus, and so it is a big problem, and so we do need to make it more livable outside. And final point that I want to make is I really like it that you have dog parks in there. For 3.5 years, I've been trying to get more dog parks in the city, and I love it that that is part of your plan, because dog parks are a great way to really get to know your neighbors and your community and what's happening in your neighborhoods. And I'm all about neighborhoods. So thank you so much. Excellent presentation. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Anyone else? Councilmember Garland?
I just want to say thank you also. Oh, get this thing out of my way. I love the plan. I loved reading the first climate action plan book. It was so well put together. So I'm really looking forward to what the final product is going to be on this. Great job, everybody. I also want to say the Resiliency Hubs, as Councilmember Adams had mentioned, absolutely love that. And the thing that I really like is I like the collaboration that you have with different businesses, with the chamber, with Local First. I also like, I went out to the Envision Center when you had that opening there, and I mentioned this to you there. I love the fact that we are not just having these open houses where people can come and talk to us about what they're interested in, that we are going out to the communities that are going to be affected by this, that you were in that community standing in front of the building that would be the Envision Center with all those boards up, and people could look and talk about it and tell us what they really wanted to have. So I just love that public outreach that you have, and I know that it'll continue, but I really want to just tell you that that was just wonderful. So thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Garland. And everyone said everything I was already going to say, so I'll just say, once again, thank you for the great work that you always do, Braden. Thank you, Andy. And as everyone talked about, I really appreciate the partnership that the city has with the Chamber of Commerce and Local First Arizona. It's really critical and key to have our business partners at the table for these conversations, and I really especially appreciate them being here and working with you, Braden, on this plan. I think it's incredible, and I think, once again, we are really, we're the pace setter, frankly, for the entire region, and I appreciate the fact that you always make sure that we are at the forefront when it comes to sustainability and climate action. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Mayor, I do have one card to be read into the record related to this item.
You see, you're telling me now.
That's from Barbie Burke, resident of Tempe. Barbie writes, I have grown up in Tempe and am a current Tempe resident. I also serve on the Tempe Sustainability Commission, the Tempe Community Council, and have driven for the Tempe Neighbors Helping Neighbors, so I believe in community outreach. I am proud that Tempe was the second city in Arizona to pass a climate action plan, and it has spurred other cities in the metro area since then to pass their own plans, including Mesa and Phoenix. Tempe has always been a leader in the metro area, and I want to see us continue to lead by doing more to fund the climate action plan so more can be implemented to make a difference for a better quality of life in Tempe for the residents and businesses. Mayor, that closes out the comment for this item.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Appreciate it. All right. Moving on here, we're going to go to item 2B, which is our transit program update. I'm going to call upon Eric Iverson, our interim Deputy Engineering and Transportation Director, who's coming up to the podium right here. And I think we also have Sam Stevenson and Bonnie Richardson, who are going to be with us virtually this evening. So,
Correct.
But Eric, since you are here in person, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you. I am sharing this presentation with Bonnie Richardson, our principal planner in our program, and Sam Stevenson, our interim transit manager. And we just want to thank, before we get into it, our partners at Valley Metro, of course. They work with us every day on these items. And then other members of our fantastic team that we work with in communications, Tiana Yee, Neighborhoods, Shauna Warner and Laura Kaifas. And then on our team, Seth Cleveland and his team. So with that, I'll get going with the next slide. I think, oh, there you go. Thank you. These are the performance measures that our transit program and fund are attached to. So the 20-minute city effort that you're all familiar with, it was mentioned in the last presentation as well. And then our transit satisfaction survey that goes out to the community every couple of years. These are the items that we want to share with you all tonight. I won't go through this list, but share with you kind of more of the recent service changes that we made last month. Some of the new stuff coming forward, like our transit shelters, the new fare collection systems that we have, a little bit of update on our fund, where we're at with the fund, and then next steps, what we're looking forward to having discussions with you all about in the early part of 2022. These are the things that the program does, builds, and provides, and this is what is paid for through the city's transit tax. All these things on here, we've been working on for 25 years since the tax was passed in 1996. The lion's share of our funding goes towards operating our service. So we're the only city in the region that doesn't have a transit desert. We're proud of that. We have service citywide through our the Orbit system, our fixed route bus, the rail system. That's where the primary share of our transit tax goes. Obviously, our buildings, the transportation center, East Valley Bus Operations and Maintenance Facility, owned and operated by Tempe, are a big share of the expenditures. And then, of course, our bike, pedestrian, streetscape projects as well. Next slide. A little bit of, we've been sharing with the council the fund updates as we've gone through the pandemic. And it's been challenging, as have been many programs at the city. Public transit was particularly hard hit. We are seeing an increase in ridership, which is good, as we return to living with the pandemic, I guess more of an endemic, but so we see a return to ridership and an improvement with our sales tax as well. So that's helping us. So those are good trends that we want to continue, want to keep working towards. We want to keep emphasizing, of course, that the fund, we've been expanding for 25 years. We don't have a lot of money to expand further. We're really trying to maintain, and again, a good quality, what we have today. So all of our facilities and all of our services, we're trying to really just maintain that.
Eric, quick question for you,
Yeah.
actually, just popped into my head. Have we seen any higher ridership with gas prices being a lot higher than they normally would be?
That's a great question. I haven't seen any information that is supporting that, but I would suspect that we'd start to see that, especially if this is a protracted period of time where gas prices are elevated. Because we've seen that historically when gas prices are high, that we've seen an increase in ridership.
Okay, just
But I
curious.
haven't hasn't been data that's showing that that I've seen. But certainly we're staying in communication with Valley Metro as well and see.
No, I appreciate that. I was thinking about it because I was in another city for a meeting just before I got here and paid $68 for gas for the car, and I was like, I almost walked back. So but I figured I wouldn't get here in time to see all of you. So
Yeah.
just curious about the correlation, but thank you, Eric. I appreciate that.
No problem. Yeah, we will certainly, we've been coming back quarterly with updates to the program, so we'll share that trend if we start to see it. So one thing we want to be really careful of is we're monitoring the contract costs for our service, and we continue to work with Valley Metro every day on that, and look at ways in which we can be more efficient and really control the growth of those contract costs. We did receive, as did many programs in the city and across the country, some COVID relief monies that has helped us. And those are one-time infusions of money, but we are trying to really maximize those to offset our local costs. Next slide.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, Councilmember Adams.
What were the amounts of money that we received for the
Oh,
COVID?
geez. Millions.
Okay.
I don't have the exact dollar amounts. We can certainly provide that to the
Higher,
council.
lower? Okay.
Yeah, we have essentially offset nearly all of, well, not all of, a lot of our operational costs for the year were offset for an entire year. So for the bus and rail service. So we can provide that information to the council, what those exact amounts were. I don't know what they were, but there was three-time infusions of money that we're spreading out over two fiscal years.
Okay, yeah, I would like that
Okay.
information. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
No, all good. So a couple things that we've been doing over the last year and a half to try and make sure that our fund is balanced. Again, we have good numbers coming forward in the way of sales tax, and so that helps us. But we do continue to be really mindful of expanding or bringing on new projects and programs that would add to our annual costs. So we're just careful about our public events and a lot of our capital projects. We're making sure that our capital projects have partners with federal funding, and that we can pay for them in the long term. So those have been careful analyses that we're doing and will continue to do. We are working on efforts, and we'll share those later in the presentation, to increase our revenues too. So things like advertising that we've been having conversations with you all about, that we will continue looking at those efforts as well. And again, as I've been saying, we have an improved sales tax, improved economy, so that is certainly bolstering our condition with the fund. I'm going to hand it over to Sam to go through, Sam Stevenson, to go through the next set of slides.
Hey, thanks, Eric. So you're all very familiar with our most recent round of service changes, which we rolled out at the end of October. These were approved by you all back in May. Essentially, we've reduced the span of service across our system, as well as a number of other changes, or really optimizations, to a select number of other routes. The goal with the service reductions was to reduce our annual operating expenditures. And as we rolled them out, we most recently worked really closely with our transit facilities group. And I want to thank Seth Cleveland and his team for all of the hard work that goes into making sure that all of our bus stops and the information provided at all those bus stops is accurate and up to date. Another thing that I want to mention is the enhanced approach to outreach that we incorporated into this round of service changes. Next slide, please. We've worked really closely with the Strategic Management and Diversity Office. Big thanks goes out to Janae Harrison and her team to help us navigate as what we see as being a reimagined version to our outreach. This will really ensure that we're being as equitable as possible in reaching the ridership and the people who may be impacted by the number of changes that we made back in October. Many people on our team are frequent transit users already, but we spent the last 2 weeks leading up to the changes out on buses at various times of the day and night to talk to people and just to do all we can to spread the word about the changes that were upcoming. We also presented our approach to the Human Relations Commission. It was one of several commissions that we met with over the past several months for their feedback and their perspective on our new process. We also called upon several sources of data, and we've done a lot of analysis to better understand exactly who our riders are and all of the different routes that we had proposed changes to. We tailored the outreach specifically to each one of these populations that we identified, and we really feel that the process that we followed will define a new standard for outreach that we'd like to perform for any up-and-coming transit-related projects in the future. Again, the goal with our updated approach is to help ensure that our outreach is equitable and that we're reaching the populations that we need to reach as we work to message the service changes or solicit feedback in future for any future projects that we're looking to deliver. Next slide, please. Advertising is potentially going to be another source of revenue for us in the future. We're working really closely with Valley Metro on this. So although we own a large portion of the transit fleet here in Tempe, the vehicles are used regionally, and Valley Metro is doing a lot of the legwork with the other regional cities to make sure that the advertising proposal is a good fit for all of the regional partners involved. A new regional bus advertising policy is actually scheduled to be brought before the Valley Metro Board for approval later this week. Of course, you're probably aware that our past practice has not been to advertise on transit assets, and we did receive some concurrence from the council earlier this year to explore advertising some of our larger 40 or 60-foot buses, which you'll see on our major arterial streets. We heard from council back in May that there's an interest in using advertising as a means to promote some of our local Tempe-specific events and initiatives on some of our transit assets. We've been exploring this, and you'll see an example on the slide here of how we actually were able to use some of our transit vehicles as a way to advertise some of our COVID vaccination events that were held here in the city. We'll continue to explore how we may be able to use this as a way in future to advertise other local initiatives or events here locally in Tempe. We also heard back in May a request to explore the possibility of partnering with and recognizing local businesses at our transit facilities. You may be familiar with our Adopt a Path program, which is already a very successful program here in the city. We're building upon that model to provide an opportunity for local businesses to be recognized at our transit shelters all throughout the city. We foresee this program as being a way to instill a sense of pride and ownership in our transit system while engaging some of our local businesses. As I mentioned, the Adopt a Path program has been very successful, and we're excited to branch out with that program to include some of our transit assets as well. Next slide, please. So another exciting update on the topic of our revenue collection is that we've resumed front door boarding on all of our buses, and that started back on October the 11th. Fares have been required throughout the pandemic, but what we haven't been able to do is necessarily validate all of those fares like we normally would be able to. This is essentially how the revenue is identified and then allocated back to Tempe. So with the return of front door boarding, we're expecting we'll see an uptick in the amount of revenue that we've been bringing in through fares. One of the things that has helped us to get to this point is the installation of operator barriers on all of our buses. Essentially, this new equipment helps to separate the operator from passengers as they stand at the fare box to pay their fare. This helps to create a more safe environment as our operators interact with passengers to collect those fares. Looking ahead, one of the things that we're really excited about is a large regional project to implement a new fare collection system using the latest and greatest fare collection technologies that have emerged in the transit industry. These include mobile ticketing and a new account-based mobile smart card system with fare capping. And we're excited to see this because not only will the new system provide a new suite of options for passengers to pay their fare, but it will also help us to tighten up the level of compliance with some of our fare policies, which we also expect to have a positive impact on our revenues. Next slide, please. Just a quick update on our streetcar project here. Essentially, we're closing out the project. You may be aware that we received an additional $17 million from the FTA earlier in the year. And essentially, we're putting that money back into the project to close out some of the items that had remained outstanding. We're going to be paving the entire alignment with new asphalt adjacent to the trackway. And we're also making sure that we have all the technology that we need to implement that new regional fare collection system on the streetcar that I just mentioned. Currently, we've received 3 of the 6 total vehicles for the project, and testing did begin earlier on this year. So you may have seen the vehicles out and about on the alignment performing various tests as the vehicles are made ready for service. Here's a photo of a streetcar crossing over Mill Avenue. We've shown a lot of renderings as the project evolved, but I assure you that this photo is the real thing. Unfortunately, there has been a slight delay with the vehicle manufacturer, and that has caused us to push the opening date for the project out by just a few months into the spring of 2022. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bonnie for an update on our new shelter design project. Oh, Bonnie, you're on mute.
These things happen.
As we say, we apologize for any technical difficulties in this new hybrid virtual format.
Well,
All right,
while we're
presentation
waiting-
over. Oh, no.
While we're waiting, I can report back on the funding that we received for the COVID relief. I texted our budget director and our financial staff, and looks like our total that we have received and are forecasted to receive is $37.5 million.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it is great. It's been
And that's
tremendously
for-
helpful.
that's-
Those are one-time infusions that we've
One-time?
spread out over a couple fiscal years, maybe
Okay.
3 fiscal years, but yeah, that's what we're looking at.
Very good. Thanks for getting such a quick response for me.
Yeah, thanks to Mark Day and Abel Gunn, our financial.
Thanks, Mark, wherever
yeah.
you are.
They're out in there.
The joys of technology.
So I don't know if we,
So, do we want
Bonnie.
to skip forward to a different slide, perhaps, or?
yeah, or I can go through these, and if Bonnie can jump on, then we'll have her take over. But
What about questions from the last presentation, maybe? Could we go over some of the questions about Sam's presentation? While we're waiting for Bonnie?
pleasure of the council.
Councilmember Cubey, can you repeat that again? You kind of came in mid-sentence.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah, just could we ask some questions about Sam's presentation while we're waiting for the
Sure,
audio?
absolutely. Councilmember Cubey, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, related to the adoption, adopt a bus shelter. I know we did talk about it in May, we talked about it previously too. What can we do, or maybe we just need consensus tonight to spur on this development, because it seems logical that if you have a transit stop in front of your business, that you'd be interested in providing shade, so you'd encourage, your customers. So what can we do? I mean, we all sort of agree on this, but what's happening to really bring it to reality?
So the Adopt a Shelter program, we're trying to bring it to reality right now. That's we thought was pretty clear direction from the council to look at this earlier in the year, and so we are forwarding through the process, through legal and through the attorney's office and with our partners. We met recently just with community services to talk about any concerns they might have. So we're working through the process, and we want to implement it soon. To make that available to the public, to stakeholders, to folks that may have a business or a home that's adjacent to a bus stop. So we are moving it forward and plan to have it be a program just like our Adopt a Street and Adopt a Path. Councilmember Cubey. We're funded to do it. We don't see any issues with it. We're excited about it. So we anticipate it.
Yeah, I would just urge greater speed, because I think it's greatly needed. And also about the streetcar, what is the plan for the fare? We've heard rumors that it's going to be free for the first year. Can you tell us definitively what the fare collection plan is for the first year?
Yeah,
and
so
beyond?
this is something the council can certainly give direction on. We've been anticipating a 6-month period. There's some concerns that if you go really long, then it's hard to introduce a fee or introduce a fare. So 6 months has been where we have been sort of landed at, and what we're recommending at this point for a free fare to get people introduced to it, get them to try out the system, get people excited about it. And then the fare itself would be $1 when we introduce that. But our plan right now is 6 months of a free period.
So depending when that begins, if it begins in May, I mean, you wouldn't want to start a fair, right? Like Thanksgiving time, you might want to just go to the next year, perhaps. But I mean, it's just, I'm open to that, but I just think we need to be cognizant of seasons.
Yeah, definitely that's something that we can consider. And I suspect we will be back before the council, so there'll be other opportunities between now and then to weigh in on that as we get closer. I think we're scheduled for 2 more appearances before Streetcar even begins service in April or May, so we can have that discussion again. But yeah, good points.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Councilmember Adams?
Yes, Eric, I just wanted to know, is the 6 months fair, is that kind of a best practice throughout the country when we roll things out?
It really varies, but yeah, there's a lot of cities that do a 6-month or a year or 3-month. There's some concern. There's some folks that have been advocating for a shorter time period. Our staff has been really kind of locked into the 6-month. We feel that's appropriate, but so it does vary across the country.
Okay, and then also can you talk about the future street line alignment?
Yeah,
What we're thinking about, just so the residents know?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Councilmember Adams. So I think it was the spring of 2020, we shared the final reports of a study that Tempe staff and Valley Metro did to look at future possible extensions. And there was support, council gave support, and it's showing up in our future plans for extensions on Rio Salado Parkway into Mesa. And Mesa was a partner. I'm sorry, I failed to mention, they were a partner on that study as well. So the 3 agencies, Mesa, Tempe, and Valley Metro, looked at that. So an extension into Mesa all the way to Dobson, Cub Stadium, Riverview, Tempe Marketplace on Rio Salado. And then there's a secondary or lower priority extension on South Mill, going down to Mill and Southern, and then down to the library at Southern and Rural. That is would be the second recommendation in those future extensions. We are looking at what we have programmed in Prop 400E, the regional sales tax transportation plan for extensions, the extension on streetcar extension on Rio Salado into Mesa. If Proposition 400E was successful in passing next fall, it would be the regional funding for that extension would be supported. And that would be, I think it's for phase 2 of Proposition 400E, so that funding would become available in, I think, 2029, 2030.
And the new
Which seems like a far way off, but it will happen quick.
Oh, sure, so I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
What about with the new federal infrastructure plan? Would that be something that maybe we could get money from to
Absolutely.
extend it?
Absolutely, and we'll be getting the rules of that money and how that money will be allocated. It'll go through the region, much like a lot of our federal funding, and we'll compete for it, I would assume. But because we have plans in place and because we are getting projects shovel-ready, I would think that we would be in good standing to compete for funding.
Very good. And how long would it take to make it happen? If we had all the money we needed, how long would it take us, Eric, to make that extension happen on Rio Salado?
That's a great question. We would want to do design and construction, assuming things fell into place, that funding was anticipated to be was successful in getting regional support, and we had our grants lined up. We would do all the design and construction documents in advance. So in the next several years, do those while we're waiting for that construction money to kick in. So construction itself would take a couple years, as we've seen with the streetcar project. So I'm just throwing, these
That's
are rough
okay. You're
estimates,
allowed.
but 2032 timeframe for earliest possible construction and operation of that extension. However, of course, the council and regional bodies like MAG and Valley Metro can advance projects if one project is a higher priority for partner cities. Those can be worked through the regional process to advance and move quicker.
Very good.
Hope that
Thank you
helps.
for your
Yeah.
excellent answers, as usual, Eric.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams.
That's yeah.
All right, let's just double check again to see if Bonnie Richardson is on the line. Bonnie, you there?
Mayor, my hand's up.
Oh, yes, Vice Mayor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this, and Eric mentioned that he'd be back before us a couple times before the decision is made, but Councilmember Kuby's question made me think of it. I had asked a member of staff about 6 months ago about how long the light rail would be free. or excuse me, the streetcar would be free and was told a year. So I've been saying that for at least 6 months consistently. So it'd be my preference, therefore, that the light rail or the streetcar be free for at least a year upon launch. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Keating. Let's see, I see Bonnie coming in through the back door over here.
Oh,
The benefit of, I have a good view of everything going on, street level and inside the chambers here.
Mr. Mayor, I really like it when people are in person for our presentations because we have some technical difficulties.
And Bonnie heard
Thank
your
you,
call.
Bonnie.
She is here
Really
in person.
appreciate it.
I'm
So,
gonna hand
yeah.
it over.
If we could work on that, Mr. City Manager, in the future, I'd appreciate it because we do have a lot of technical problems.
Eric, we shall see you in a bit.
Thanks
I
so
can
much.
confirm that, yeah.
Technology is a wonderful
We'll go ahead and let Bonnie
thing.
speak.
Thanks.
So I'm happy to talk with you about our new bus shelters. The 4 sizes that you see here, I'm kind of catching my breath. In these designs, we're meeting the needs of more of our transit ridership by being able to serve our restricted sites with a smaller footprint shelter. And those will also cost less than the standard shelters. As you can see, we currently have 777 bus stops, but 467 are currently without shelters. Limited right-of-way is usually our biggest challenge. So we're addressing those issues, and in these designs, we have flexibility in terms of being able to address what size we can fit. So we've got 4 different footprints, all have a larger canopy, and will provide more shade than our existing shelters. We did extensive public outreach and had over 400 comments and survey responses. And the public let us know what they thought was most important. And top of the list was shade, and more seating. So we were certain that each of these designs would address those particular issues first. Sustainable design is also important, and we're collaborating with ASU and 3M Corporation to test a new type of solar film. We did this on 3 of our existing shelters, and we're currently gathering all the data. The intent here is that this film reflects the heat of the shelter into deep space. And what that does is it draws cooling under the shelter. So it sounds kind of magical. It hasn't been done on shelters before. So we'll bring back to you the test results. And potentially in the future, this would work as well for our parks, shelters, and other outdoor buildings to add more cooling. So in addition, sustainability is important with not just solar power, but also we had consideration for local materials, local fabrication, modular design, being able to replace parts locally, interchangeable parts, and also reflects flexibility and recyclability. Prioritization, and here we are on our slide now, prioritization of how we place the new shelters is important. Most cities use transit ridership as the feature that they identify where they will place their shelters first. In this case, we've decided to look at 2 other priorities, transit propensity and heat vulnerability. Transit propensity indicates the likelihood that someone will use transit within a census block. So within this number, we can factor in population, employment numbers, and the equity data, including zero-car households, poverty, minorities, and the disabled community. Heat vulnerability, of course, is important. You've heard Braden talk a lot about that. And we know if you have to stand without any shelter in our summer heat, it's very difficult for our ridership. In our existing shelters, we'll use both transit ridership and propensity, but the third factor will be the existing condition. And we have great staff who's out there always monitoring that. Pictured here is the structural framing for the small shelter, which can seat 6 to 10 transit patrons, depending on the bus stop conditions. And while the small shelter has a smaller footprint, it offers more roof coverage and seating than both of our current shelters. We've added custom designed flip-down seats for more flexibility. And what we're intending to do is put the smallest 3 of the 4 designs at the library in January so that you and the commissioners and the general public can come sit on these, take a look, and we can again take even more input. And if we need to, we can then fine tune the design before we go into production. We hope to be able to install 24 to 39 shelters a year. A lot of that depends on not only budget, but also the size of the shelters that we're installing. And this could take from 12 to 19 years. We're anxious to begin this summer or fall. And the numbers here are 90% estimate that the new shelters, all 4 sizes, will run between $13,800 and $45,000 each. So I'm happy to take any questions after Eric comes back.
Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate it. Anyone from the council have any comments or questions for Bonnie, or should we go right back to Eric? Actually, Bonnie, before you go too far, Councilmember Adams.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. I really appreciate you coming in tonight, and it's always a pleasure to see you. We've known each other a while now. So you look great. You did a great job. Really appreciate all your help. On the shelters, if we get the infrastructure funding from the federal government, how fast can we put shelters? So I would love to see more shelters go up as fast as we can. And I'm just wondering, like, what would be, if we have all the money, kind of what I asked Eric earlier, if we had all the money in the world, like, how fast could we do it?
Well, part of that also depends on if we have the staff to do it as well. And also what we're finding is we're having some supply chain challenges. So even on these shelters as we're designing them, we made some changes so that we could replace what would have taken months to receive to finding something we could get locally.
Okay.
So we can produce them pretty quickly once we get the final prototypes approved, but we do need to get out there and work both at the location. This is assuming we have enough right-of-way. In areas where we don't, there's an opportunity to work with the landowner, which is usually commercial, to see if we couldn't work that out. So some of that just takes time.
Okay, and then are we going to put any trees around the shelters?
I've been working with our streets landscape and with Richard Adkins, and I'm doing a total evaluation of all the bus stops. And as I look at those sites, I'm identifying where we might be able to put trees. Again, most of the time, there's area for trees, but it's on private property, the other side of the right-of-way line, so we're really limited in what we can do. Also, in some places in the right-of-way, we don't have access to water. So the cost of putting in a meter from the middle of the street and running it makes it more difficult than you might expect.
Very good. Well, thank you for your service to our city. Great
Thanks.
job.
Thank you so much. Any other council members, any comments or questions for Bonnie before we switch back to Eric?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, my hand.
Yes, Councilmember Cubey?
Yeah, so Bonnie, I imagine there are economies of scale to produce more shelters. The price goes down when we produce more, is that right?
Yes, that's true.
And
And
that's built into the
we're
estimated
working
cost.
with a local fabricator. So again, once we get this, we've also attempted to try to be consistent in panel sizes and parts so they can switch from one size to another quite easily. But we'd be able to produce in multiples, and again, that could save us money down the road. Right now, at the prototype, it's kind of a one-off, but I'm sure we could get some savings if we do place larger orders and work more quickly.
So if I could just relate this little story. Right after I got elected in 2014, Harry Mitchell and Harry took me on a drive across the city, into other cities actually, and we were observing he was observing the lack of shade in many of our bus shelters, and we're driving. It was almost like a picture perfect moment where a fellow was crouched into a oleander bush to provide some shade while he waited for the bus. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know all of you transportation folks would like to see this speed along, and there are limitations with supply chain and all the rest. But to look at a goal for 2032 or 2041, it's just, I really think we need to give really increased attention to this. And I know that, shade is I'm glad we're connecting this today, because shade is a transportation issue. Transportation is a shade issue. It's essential that, especially as we double our tree canopy, our shade canopy, that this be uppermost in our minds, because we're not going to have a full adoption of our transit ridership until we make it comfortable for people to even walk to the bus stop, let alone wait at the bus stop. So I do appreciate your work, and I would just urge council that for us to really supercharge this effort. And I'm wondering, Bonnie, do you know offhand the START tool, when we look at how we will spend our imaginary $100? Which category does increased shade at bus stops fall into?
Well, I believe it's really important because, again, we're trying to expand our ridership, serve our community, and the heat is just a very difficult issue to deal with in the summer and through much of the year. And so I think by adding the trees and the bus shelters, we've really got a win here. But it's going to take more than just one department to address that, and it will take participation of our community to be interested in putting trees on their property as well.
Sure, and not to put you on the spot, but if staff could identify maybe in a rule of 7, which START measure will help to increase the speed and adoption of more sheltering for bus stops, that would be appreciated.
Can't hear.
Lauren, the mayor stepped out for a minute. Can you repeat the question? It was difficult to hear.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just hoping that staff, either, if not right now, but maybe in a rule of 7 request, just to let us know in the START mechanism, because we're all spending time trying to figure out how we want to spend our imaginary 100 budgetary dollars, which is the category that helps speed adoption of shade and bus shelters.
That'd be great. I'll turn that over to Eric.
Sounds good. What other, what Councilmember Cubey's talking about with the START tool is it's a tool where every council member, in terms of determining priorities for the city, is given an imaginary $100, and you're able to allocate that money in whatever way you want. You can pick 5 items and give them $20 a piece. You can pick 100 items and give them $1 a piece. It all kind of comes down to each council member's different priorities and how much weight they want to put on certain items. I actually turned mine in a week ago, so mine's already done. But I don't know. But I do believe, I think Councilmember Navarro was saying, I think they are due this Friday. So council does have an opportunity to sort of kind of weigh in on these things and give staff at least some idea about what we might want to focus on in the coming year. One other quick thing too for council, in this sort of virtual format, I know because we did everything before virtually, I can't actually see hands. There's no way for me to control that from my screen. So I apologize if people say that they've got their hands up. I just don't have any ability to see them. So if you do want to talk, if you're a council member on the phone, you're just going to have to speak up and I'll call on you. So, but I just cannot see them. So, anything else, anyone?
Well, just one last thing, Mr. Mayor. We heard about the climate action plan. Sorry, Bonnie, you don't have to sit down, but we heard from the climate action plan in engagement with our young people who really wanted to see more investment in shade for bus shelters. So this is an opportunity where we can breathe life into that document.
Sounds good.
No,
absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember Cubey. Eric,
If I
back
could
to
just
you.
add a note to that, and it kind of references Councilmember Adams' comment about more money for shelters and if we could speed things up. I will just tell you that through the reductions that we've done in the transit fund over the last 2 fiscal years, we've preserved the transit shelter funding that we have as one of the many items in our program because we think it's so important. So that did not take a cut. And we keep looking for opportunities, federal opportunities, maybe new infrastructure, federal program that we could get a one-time infusion of a lot of money that could really advance and make quicker the installation, to Councilmember Cubey's point, of these shelters. So, and I think, Councilmember Cubey, the transit satisfaction performance measure, which is, Shelley just texted it to me, 3.29, I think, is the one that you would use to try to allocate more funding for shelters, I believe.
Sounds good.
Hopefully that helps.
3.29 it is.
I see that, but you and I mean, this is a deeper discussion maybe for later, but we can see how the START tool sometimes doesn't necessarily connect to actual projects on the ground or priorities. It can be a clunky mechanism at times. So
Yeah.
just wanted to mention that.
Sounds
Okay, I'll
good.
go.
Thank you.
I'll run through these last. Thank you, Bonnie, for that cameo, and the last couple slides. So one thing that we want to make sure, and we have mentioned this at previous council meetings in this year, but we want to make sure you're aware of. We will be coming back to the council in 2022 for a couple council meetings to get direction on this next item, and that is really operations of our bus service. It's the largest contract that we have in our program, one of the largest at the city. The city previously had contracted directly with a vendor to operate our service. For the last 8 years, we've contracted with Valley Metro, who then contracts with an outside vendor to operate service. We're doing an analysis per council request to do an analysis of what's the most efficient and best way, cost efficient, best quality, best quantitative way to run our service in our community. We're engaged with Nelson Nygaard right now to do that study. We'll be bringing back the initial results, I think, in February, and then asking for direction on where you want to go with this for the next era of bus service in our community, includes Orbit, over the next 10 years. So that decision will be coming, we'll be asking for you in spring of 2022. Lots of information and data that we'll be sharing with you about that, including what peer cities are doing, cost per mile for service, and really the pros and cons of the different scenarios for operating our service. That's coming up in the spring. Next slide. So next thing is, in addition to the contract analysis and direction on how we run our bus service in the spring of 2022, we'll also be coming back, sharing with you all the results of the public feedback on the final analysis of our bus shelters before we begin implementing those. And any other transit fund and long-term solvency issues we'll come back to you with. Again, we're in a good spot with that, but those are really the upcoming things in our program and what we're looking forward to in 2022 with you all. With that, I'll open up for questions.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Really appreciate it. Any council members, any comments or questions?
Well, Mr. Mayor, is this the end of the transportation presentation?
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to ask, Eric, you know, I've been a big proponent of electric buses, and I know that the City of Tucson has acquired 5 electric buses. Sam, you and I have talked about this as well, and they're hopeful to get more funding from the infrastructure bill that was passed. There may be more opportunities too for electric buses. Where are we on that continuum? Are we going to follow in the footsteps of Tucson?
So we continue, that's a great question, Councilmember Cubey. We continue to pursue opportunities to bring electric buses into the community. As you know, we do have challenges different than the rest of the planet, really, because of our heat and the battery life associated with this technology. We're in the middle of a grant application to the DOT for electric buses that would be, we're doing that in partnership with Valley Metro. And as you know, we submitted earlier this year a grant that we were unsuccessful in getting to purchase electric buses. So we continue to look at those opportunities. We're hopeful with the new federal infrastructure and some of the other innovations that are coming forward at the federal level that we'll be able to land there eventually and get electric buses. That's our goal. We have a lot of support from our other stakeholders and partners in the region. So we are pursuing every opportunity that is appropriate, grant opportunity and otherwise, to get funding to make that happen, make it a reality.
Well, thanks, and hopefully we can learn from Tucson's example, because I know we did have a bit of a disastrous rollout decades ago, and I think that weighs heavily on staff's mind. And I understand, you know, it feels like a risk, but you know, Tucson is certainly an arid climate as well that has similar challenges. So hopefully we can learn from their experience. So thank you, Eric. I know you and Sam are really intent on making this happen.
Yeah, we did learn a lot those decades ago, and we have had, I think, 3 now test trials just in the last couple of years of electric buses on some of our routes to make sure that it does work here. So we're certainly doing our due diligence to make sure that the investment that we eventually make is going to work. So appreciate the comments.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Cubey. Any other council members' comments or questions on this item for Eric?
Mayor.
Yes.
Hi, Mayor, this is Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Hello, Councilmember Arredondo Savage.
Nice. You know what, just a couple things. Of course, I I always, when I have an opportunity, I just want to say thank you so much to our transportation team. I can't tell you how remarkable our transportation team is. That we have Sam and Eric, and Marge has been a great part of that, and Shelley, and now Bonnie making her cameo appearance. It's just been really great working side by side with these guys, and doing our best to advocate for what we want in the city of Tempe through the Valley Metro Regional System. So I just want to say again, thank you guys very much for what you do. You really truly are making a difference in continuing to advocate for our residents, which it's been great to be a part of. I would say the one thing that most interests me, and that we've been talking about and you guys are working on, is the study that's going to be coming up. So I'm really interested to see how that works out in regards to the information that we get back from the independent vendor. I think we all kind of forget, and it's just a really good reminder when we talk about transportation dollars. Obviously, we have the public transportation fund, but there's also cities that use local transportation dollars. And the city of Tempe uses the second most local transportation dollars because of our transportation tax, just next to Phoenix. So I just will say that we continue to invest in transportation, and that has been a big priority for us, and nothing has changed in my mind, and I don't think in the vision of the city. So I do say one thing that we need to continue to push for and work on is ridership. Ridership has been an issue even before the pandemic hit, and we had continually pushed on ridership. And I understand wanting to do a lot of the extensions, and I think that's going to be valuable and important. But one of the things I think we need to continue to work on is really educating that younger generation and encouraging them to become multi users of transportation. I think that's kind of where our bread and butter will be when it comes to ridership. Our ridership was down like over 50% during the pandemic, and that's kind of scary. So, this is a great opportunity for us, I think, to kind of reinvent ourselves, encourage people to get on board. If I don't want to use any silly pun, but that's what I'm going to go with. So anyway, I'm looking forward to that, and you guys are continuing to work on a lot of things that I think are important to us, and all the reduced fare abuse that I think that we've seen over the past. Hopefully that'll be kind of corrected in the year to come. Our fare recovery at the door. Now we're back at front door boarding and really working more closely with Phoenix. I think that's great. And really just addressing the customer service complaints, because when we don't have that much local control, we have to work as a region. And I think to continue to put our thumb on the importance of resolutions for our customers, for our riders. That's always been something that's really important to Tempe. So I really do appreciate you guys continuing to stay on top of that and ensuring that we're getting good resolution and solutions for our residents. So I just want to say again, thank you guys so very much for what you do. And I think it was very interesting that Lauren brought up electric vehicles, because that's been something in the Audit and Finance Subcommittee that, myself and I've been working with Mayor Gallego. And not necessarily just electric vehicles when we talk about bus, but just their fleet too. So when their fleets that they use on a daily basis. So hopefully we've pushed hard enough with Valley Metro that they will continue to look at ways that they can incorporate electric vehicles just within their own fleet, and then hopefully the bus fleet moving forward. So thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Kuby. That's definitely something that's been on the radar in the region that everybody is hopefully looking forward to in the future. But again, just thank you guys for what you do. Much appreciated. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Arenado Savage. Any of the council members, any further comments or questions? All right, hearing none. Well, thank you so much, Eric. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate the presentation. Great job as always. All right, next up we have item number 3, which is the call to the audience. The City Council welcomes public comment at this time for items listed under Section 4, Committee of the Whole items on the work study session agenda. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker. There's 2 items I want to note that are here ready for City Council direction this evening. And for those who are going to be providing comments on agenda item 4A2, this is just sort of the first step for this topic. And if the council decides to move forward this evening, there are going to be ample opportunities to speak in the future. Item 4A, items ready for City Council direction or a status update. We've got the Human Services and Community Safety Committee, and the first item here is Youth Specialist Program funding. Does any member from that committee want to give a brief update on that item? Councilmember Garwood.
Sorry. Yeah, so all that we're asking for is to move forward on this item We had a presentation on this before about the youth specialist positions that we want to make them a permanent, at least a 5-year, get them permanent, because right now all we have is this, we keep approving this in our budget, and we've been approving it, but we've been doing it annually. So we don't get the continuity in the positions, and we don't get people who feel like they really can hold on to their job. And we want them to stay in their positions if they can, and really work with our students and build those relationships up. And it's really difficult to do when we get a year turnaround. So what we're looking for is to move this forward, to do a 5-year IGA with Tempe Union High School District, to ensure that long-term partnership that we work with them. And our human services staff has already reached out to them, and they are willing and excited to do this. And so this really isn't going to make a change to our budget, because we're already providing these services, we're already providing the benefits to them. It's just that we will stop doing it annually and just make positions permanent. And so we'd just like to have council direction and discussion about moving that forward.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Garland. Any other council members, any comments on this item? Councilmember Adams.
I'm supportive of moving that forward.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. I'm supportive as well. Any other council member want to weigh in? Councilmember
Hey, Mayor,
Navarro?
this is Robin. Absolutely. 100%. Thank you to Joel and Doreen. I think you guys have done an awesome job. I think that having youth specialists in our schools, there is no better time to do that. So thank you for bringing it forward, and I'm 100% supportive.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilmember Arredondo Savage. Councilmember Navarro?
Absolutely.
All right, sounds good. Any other council members, any other comments?
Yes, I'm supportive as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Anyone else? All right, sounds good. Sounds like you got direction to move forward on that item. Congratulations, Councilmembers Navarro and Garland.
Thank you.
Next up here, I know we have several comments for item 4A2. Carla, I'm going to ask if you've got people who are going to be virtually speaking or comment cards, if you want to do those first, and then I'll go to the live speakers.
Yes, Mayor, we do have 4 virtual speakers. First one would be Brian Fojic. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, Brian. Karen, if you can unlock Brian's microphone.
Can you hear me?
He's unlocked.
Yes, we can hear you.
Me? Okay, great. Thank you, Mayor Woods. My name is Brian Foydick. I speak on behalf of the National Association of Tobacco Outlets and our Tempe retail members, primarily gas stations, convenience stores, and tobacco shops. Our executive director shared some of our concerns in an email, and I hope you have time to read it and consider it. Youth smoking and smokeless tobacco use have been declining for decades and are at historic lows. Recently released FDA and CDC data demonstrates that youth vaping has declined each of the last 2 years for a total decline of 60% to rates lower than 2014. Things are moving quickly in the right direction. Proponents of this effort are attempting to use legitimate concern about youth vaping to ban thousands of products that youth are not using that have nothing to do with vaping. The draft legislation is excessively broad and ignores the fact that in the last 2 months, the FDA has banned over 6 million flavored vaping products. We ask you to truly investigate and understand the FDA process taking place right now. Additionally, independent gas stations and convenience stores are disproportionately owned by women, people of color, and immigrants for whom English is not a first language. Before moving forward with legislation, I would hope you would inform and engage those retailers. These businesses are suffering significant losses in fuel sales and in-store sales due to the pandemic. This could further reduce revenues by as much as 35%, causing many stores to lay off employees and some to close. It is our hope that before moving forward with any legislation, you inform these Tempe businesses, solicit feedback, and use that feedback to significantly amend any ordinance. Additionally, there's no rational basis to believe this approach will reduce youth access to or use of these products. It hasn't worked anywhere else. Not only has it failed to achieve its goals, but 3 peer-reviewed, recently published studies demonstrate that these types of bans have resulted in significantly increased youth and young adult smoking. If that were to happen in Tempe, you won't simply have failed to solve the problem, you will have created more problems and created a significant negative health impact. If this ordinance becomes law, enforcement will inevitably, specifically, and disproportionately target people of color. There will be expanded illicit trade in menthol cigarettes, and it will result in increased negative interactions between people of color and law enforcement, that history has taught us often don't end well. We encourage you to let the FDA continue its product reviews and consider the impact on youth usage of these products before considering this approach. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Carla, next up.
Next speaker is David Morris.
Okay, Mr. Morris.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me the time to speak. As she said, my name is David Morris. I was born and raised in Tempe, and I'm now the president of the Arizona Smoke-Free Business Alliance. I'd like to start by saying that as an ex-smoker myself, we share your passion for preventing anyone of any age from smoking cigarettes, but especially minors. However, as the speaker before me just mentioned, I think it's important to look at what other cities have done to see what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, what made the problem worse. For example, the city of San Francisco was the first to ban flavored vaping products in 2018, but by 2019, they had a youth smoking rate over twice as high as the surrounding cities. Massachusetts banned flavored vaping products across the whole state, and they didn't see any decline in youth usage, but they did see an increase in the smoking rates among adults for the first time in a decade. I've also heard an argument recently that the staggering 60% decrease in youth usage over the last 2 years could be attributed to COVID and the accompanying school closures. However, the youth usage rates of other age-restricted products such as cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana either stayed the same or increased during that same time period. So I don't think that's the case. I'd also like to address the claim that adults will still be able to buy tobacco-flavored vapor products. What is failed to be considered in that is that a percentage of adult vapors that use flavored products is even higher than that of minors, and with good reason. The over 10,000 adult vapors who live and work in Tempe, frankly, don't want to be reminded of the deadly cigarettes that they narrowly escaped thanks to vaping. And forcing recovered smokers to vape tobacco-flavored products is kind of like holding an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting at a bar and serving non-alcoholic beer. Frankly, there's just too many triggers there, and it makes the slip from vaping back to smoking that much easier to make, much like we've seen in other cities and states that made the same mistake that's being discussed today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk.
Next speaker, Amanda Wheeler.
Okay, Ms. Wheeler.
I don't see her in the audience anymore. She was in there earlier.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll move on to Kyle Adolf.
Okay, Mr. Adolf.
Okay, moving on. I believe you also have a
No,
card from.
I'm sorry. He's there. He's unmuted.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Adolf, we're all set whenever you're ready. Mr. Adolf, are you there? All right, Madam Clerk, let's go to the next and see if we can come back to Mr. Adolf in a second.
Mr. Adolf also submitted a card to read, so I could do that instead later.
You know what, let's go ahead and do that then if he had written comments.
Sure, and then I believe we have a card from this gentleman as well. We have Tame Altai, who is also here. Come on forward.
So, Madam Clerk, just before Tame speaks, actually, do you have any other written comments or virtual speakers?
I have a number of written comments that I'll read at the end, and
Okay.
then we can move to your pile after Tame is finished.
Okay, so Tame's actually in my pile right now, so, okay. Since you're here, I'm going to let you go ahead. Please state your name and place of residence. 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. My name is Tame. Oh, good evening. Sorry. So, good evening, Council. Good evening, Mayor. I'm not a resident of Tempe, but my dad works and has a business in Tempe, which is a smoke shop. So I came in and saw the news today of what's happening, and I just wanted to let you guys know that the impact of this is individuals that are used to smoking a certain flavor, and when this flavor is taken, this will cause a psychological impact. People already have headaches. And with the recent pandemic, everyone's just out of it, tired, and all sorts. So losing out on these flavors will frustrate people and make them do incorrect actions. People would want that. And this ban will also cause sales to go down, which will hurt business owners like my dad and like others. And this will affect taxes for Tempe for sure, which will also go down. And so this will limit and kind of reduce Tempe projects and ideas. So, and anyone who's interested in moving to Tempe will hesitate knowing that, oh, I can't open my business over here no more, or this will hurt my business. So cigarettes are a bad thing, but flavored or non-flavored, they still have the same result. So that's the end of my discussion. So thank you for listening.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you want to go back to the written ones and
So Mayor, if you'd like to finish with our guests that
finish
are
with
live.
the guests?
We can
Okay,
do that,
you
and I'll
got it.
finish with the read.
All right, I'll do whatever you say. Next up, we have Trish Hart from the AFMA. Ms. Hart?
Mayor and members of the council, it's my pleasure to be here tonight. I want to thank you for taking our testimony. I am here today in opposition to this on behalf of the Arizona Food Marketing Alliance. The Arizona Food Marketing Alliance represents retail grocers and convenience stores throughout the state. We are responsible retailers of age-restricted products, and we take that responsibility very seriously. We make sure that we ensure that our employees are trained to make sure that they do not sell to underage minors. That is something that is very, very important to our retailers, and as responsible retailers, that's something that we strive to make sure our employees do not do. The reason that we are opposed to this particular piece of legislation is that we believe that the regulation of tobacco and vapor products should be done at the state level. And we have been working with a coalition of retailers across the state to ensure that that happens. We believe that age-restricted products like alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and vapor products are very important and should be regulated at the state level. And we would ask that you work with us to support legislation that would help to address these issues at the state level. And with that, I appreciate the
Thank you. Really
time.
Thank you, Ms. Hart. Next up, I have Mark Miller from the AFMA.
Mayor Woods, City Councilman, thank you again so much for your time. This is really a big problem and a big issue for all of us. As we all know, it's been going on for hundreds of years, tobacco use, and it got, glamorized and glorified in the black and white days in the World War II. So it continued to increase. And, when I was young, and it was on every NASCAR, every billboard, every magazine. It was all throughout there, and it's changed dramatically over the last several decades. About 20 years ago, the FDA asked the manufacturers of tobacco products to try to find a solution that could help people get off of tobacco and hopefully have something that would have less health risks. So that's when they started developing vaping. And then about 10 years after that, they really kind of got a handle on it, and they introduced it to the market. And then the flavors started, and that's where the real issue started, is when the flavors started to appealing to more people, and it became a national problem. And then the young people in the high schools started to using it more. So in our food industry, we represent the national grocery stores, the local grocery stores, and the convenience stores. And we got together and we supported nationally to raise the age to 21. And that happened a few years ago. Even though that hasn't happened in Arizona yet, we have taken it upon ourselves to raise the age to 21. And one of the other things I want to bring attention, I think we all remember a bill that was started First Things First that helped fund education, a wonderful program for first year and pre-kindergarten, and that was funded by tobacco taxes. And one of the things that happened was that we pushed about 30% of the volume out of Arizona into the Native American reservations. So we lost a lot of tax dollars. And with that, they developed more business. And then what we're worried about is that as restrictions become more and more within the cities, this will push more people that purchase tobacco to the Indian reservations where the same restrictions aren't in place. So big problems like alcohol control, tobacco, and now even marijuana, it requires state solutions, and that's what Tricia and I are going to work with in the legislation. ASU is a member of our board, and we supported a tobacco-free campus, and we 100% agree with that. The bill that we're working on has 5 of the major components that kind of mirrors what you're working on. So as a state level, we're working on licensing. We're working on training for our people that it is currently going on now. There is fines involved if people are not following the rules that are in place. We have enforcement, which is going to be part of it too. And then it has marketing restrictions as well. So to initiate something like this is very expensive, and we want it to be a state solution versus a city by city. Any questions from anyone?
Anyone have any questions? All right, sounds good. No,
Thank
Mr.
you
Bill.
for your
Appreciate
time and your service to Tempe. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it. Next up, we have Joseph Uhas from the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for this opportunity to come before you this evening. I'm here on behalf of the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. I'm a resident of Phoenix, but I'm here for a broader coalition of organizations, leaders, individuals in the education, public health, communities, parents, their siblings, kids, because kids are being hooked by these dangerous products. Now, Tempe has been on the forefront of tobacco control policies really for years. You passed the 2002, you passed one of the few cities in the state at that point to pass an ordinance to prohibit the sale of or the use of tobacco products in public places. As we were waiting for a state solution, that never came. Ultimately, it was up to the voters of Arizona who implemented what you did here in Arizona as pioneers in tobacco control to end the use of tobacco products in public places. In 2014, you passed an ordinance to prohibit the use of e-cigarette products in public places. Again, first city in the state to do that. Tempe has been a leader in this movement. And we're not here tonight to debate a particular ordinance. What we're here tonight is a measure in front of, activity in front of you tonight, an action in front of you tonight to direct your staff to look at this issue. Look at this issue that has affected 1 out of 6 high school students in this state. Flavors hook kids. Tobacco industry has a long history of targeting children, whether it's through marketing, advertising, discounts, location of retail facilities in proximity to schools, but now the newest effort has been using these flavored products, e-cigarette products, that are creating the next generation of nicotine addicts. This is a legacy opportunity for all of you. This isn't something that will have an immediate impact and only an immediate impact. It'll have an impact for generations to come. So I'm here tonight to encourage you to direct your staff, as the action before you, to seriously examine this issue, including refuting statements that were made tonight as facts, because we will come back and we will provide evidence for each and every argument you heard tonight in terms of its business impact, in terms of impact on public health, because these were the same arguments that were used in 2002 when Mayor Neil Giuliano and your predecessors were debating the actions that they took at that time that, again, became a model for the entire state. So thank you tonight for hearing us out, and we look forward to working with you as this issue moves forward. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Uhas. Anyone have any comments or questions? All right, hearing none, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I guess, and Madam Clerk, I'll turn back to you for the remainder of the comments.
Okay. First comment, I'll read Kyle Adolph's written comment since we weren't able to bring him up. Kyle Adolf of Phoenix. Thank you, Tempe City Council, for allowing me to share my comments. My name is Kyle Adolf. I am the owner of Cream Vapor Marketplace, E-Liquid, and Mr. Vape USA Distribution. Our companies have been located in Tempe for the past 6 years. We started in the Hohokam Industrial Plaza with 1 suite and no employees, and have grown to employing over 12 persons and now reside in 2 suites in the same location. We only sell to verified retail distributors and wholesalers around the country. We collect EINs, all local licenses and pertinent operating information, verify location, etc. We thoroughly vet everyone we do business with. We truly believe in building close relationships with them. Our families and their families are dependent on our companies. We also contribute to the Tempe businesses through our purchasing and patronization of local businesses daily. We fill up with gas in Tempe. We eat in Tempe, shop in Tempe every single day. Our sales consist of 100% flavored vapor products. Most former smokers are not interested in vaping tobacco flavor because that is what they are quitting. The industry is built on selling flavors to adults. Per the latest CDC report, youth vaping is down 38% since T21 was enacted. The vape stores in Tempe and around the country are not the problem with youth vaping. The problem is the C stores where someone under 21 can enter and purchase at will. Vape stores are facing shutdowns every year through different political pressures, and 99% of the owners are not violating anything that would jeopardize their business. They have their everything into this. A $20 bottle isn't worth it to them. T21 was something this industry supported from day one, and it is working. As a company that sells locally and nationally, we have never seen a drop in sales due to flavor bans, and here is why. Consumers do not stop vaping. They just drive out of the districts to buy products or continue to buy online. The only revenue loss is to the cities that lose businesses and tax dollars on sales. Employees also then become a burden on the state through unemployment and financial needs to support their families, broken leases, empty buildings, etc. This flavor ban would be very detrimental to my business and cause a chain reaction effect I fear very much. This ban would cause consumers to go back to cigs, elsewhere for product, or lastly, the black market. It would shut down retail stores in an instant, as up to 97% of e-liquid sales are flavored products. No business can survive on those margins or lack thereof, thus hitting us. No consumers locally, no shops locally, no need for a local wholesaler. We have been fortunate enough to grow, and we would love to keep growing right here in Tempe. What no one wants to see is this to turn it into a black market industry or adults going back to cigs. Smoking kills, vaping saves lives, and that can be factually backed. Thank you very much for your time and consideration, Kyle Adolf. Next card comes from Amanda Gray of Phoenix. Amanda writes, on behalf of dozens of small business gas stations and convenience store retailers in the city of Tempe, please do not take action without input from us. My name is Amanda Gray, and I'm the Executive Director of the Arizona Petroleum Marketers Association. APMA represents gas stations and convenience stores providing staple grocery items, drinks, fuel, and snacks in your neighborhood. Our members are responsible retailers of tobacco and vapor products. We agree with and have supported regulation of tobacco and vapor retailers at the state level. We support statewide licensing of retailers, as well as increased enforcement tools and serious penalties for stores that sell to underage purchasers. We do not support a city-specific ban on flavored products. They would merely drive sales from one side of the road to the other. Tobacco and vapor products are the top of the list sales category for convenience stores. In 2019, they accounted for 34% of inside C-store sales on average. Banning all flavored products, including menthol, would be devastating to your community and small businesses. Next is Vince Rafferty of Scottsdale. Thank you, Tempe City Council, for allowing me to share my comments. My name is Vince Rafferty. I'm an employee of Cream Vapor Marketplace e-Liquid and Mr. Vape USA Distribution. Our companies have been located in Tempe for the past 6 years. This is very similar to the last one. We started in the Holcomb Industrial Plaza with 1 suite and no employees, and had grown to employing over 12 persons, and now reside in 2 suites in the same location. We only sell to wholesale and its distributors around the country, so we do not collect sales tax. However, our employees and their families are dependent on companies. We also contribute to Tempe businesses through our purchasing and patronization of local businesses. Our sales consist of 100% flavored vapor products. Most former smokers are not interested in vaping tobacco flavor because that's what they're quitting. The industry is built on selling flavors to adults. Per the latest CDC report, youth vaping is down 38% since T21 was enacted. The vape stores in Tempe and around the country are not the problem with youth vaping. The problem is the convenience stores where someone under 21 can enter and purchase at will. Vape stores are facing shutdowns every year, though different political pressures. 99% of the owners are not violating anything that would jeopardize their business. T21 was something this industry supported from day one, and it is working. As a company that sells nationally, we have never seen a drop in sales due to flavor bans. People just drive out of those districts to buy products or continue to buy online. The only revenue losses to the city is that lose businesses and tax dollars on sales. Employees would also become a burden to the state through unemployment and financial needs to support their families. What no one wants is to see this turn into a black market industry. I don't see people stopping because of political reasons. Smoking kills and vaping saves lives, and that can be factually backed. Next item is from Carlos Coe of Florence. Carlos writes, "Thank you, Tempe City Council, for allowing me to share my comments. My name is Carlos Coe, and I've been with Mr. Vape USA for 3.5 years. We've been in business for going on 3.5 years and employ 12 people in the downtown Tempe area. We are a business-to-business company that distributes directly to retailers and wholesalers around the company. So we do not collect sales tax in Tempe. Our employees and families, however, depend on our company. Not to mention, we support local business eateries, print shops, t-shirt companies. Some of our employees are homeowners in the city. Our sales consist of primarily flavored tobacco products to registered business owners who enforce the federal tobacco 21 and over sale limit. The shops we work with are adult-centric, requiring ID with every purchase, and nearly all of them prohibit minors from even setting foot on the premise, be that an infant child, small toddler accompanying an adult, etc. Over the years, our industry has worked diligently to enforce and prevent the sale of our product to minors at every opportunity, even imposing self-regulating guidelines prior to federal implementation in 2016. This is something we take incredibly seriously. While we agree 100% that these products should never fall into the hands of a minor, we have to acknowledge the adults who want to move away from combustible tobacco to a safer alternative. In addition, flavor bans do not stop the distribution and flow of these products, forces them into an underground black market with zero oversight and transparency. Smoking kills, vaping saves lives, and this can be factually backed when the politics are stripped from the argument. To support and enforce a flavor ban is to hand over a portion of the small business that caters to adults in adult environments over to a shady underground black market, a black market with no vested interest in health or the well-being of their customers, and certainly no interest whatsoever in paying any form of tax. Let us not forget what happened when people purchased THC vapes outside of legal medical recreational dispensaries in the last 2 years. Many developed severe lung issues and even died because of the lack of standards and oversight that forced these products into the black market. Thank you, Carlos Coe. Last item is from Maggie Gowan of Richmond, Virginia. Maggie writes, "I represent Cure CBD and Vapes. We operate 2 vape stores located within Tempe and employ 7 people. We're a very responsible retailer and only sell vapor products to adults 21 and over. We scan IDs, have third-party age verification, and a secret shopper program. The average age of our customers is 37 years old, and over 90% of them are former traditional tobacco users. Over 85% of those adult customers use flavored e-cigarette products and attribute flavors to their success from moving from deadly combustible cigarettes. Scientific studies have proven that vaping is 95% safer than smoking. The FDA has recognized through scientific review that some vaping products are indeed beneficial for the protection of public health and do not appeal to youth. I ask that you please consider letting the FDA continue their aggressive enforcement of removing the bad players from the market. FDA has cleared over 6 million in products from the U.S. market and continue to do so. FDA also has numerous vapor products under scientific review that could be approved any day now and could have an enormous positive effect on public health to help the millions of smokers who are currently dying from deadly cigarettes. I ask that you please reject this citywide ordinance, and thank you for your consideration." Mayor, that closes the public comment.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for providing public comment this evening. I guess I'm going to look to Councilmember Navarro and Councilmember Garland this was their council committee. So, Councilmember Garland.
Okay, thank you. So we had a presentation at our Human Services and Community Safety Committee meeting, and it was brought to us by Tempe parents, by the Tempe Coalition, and that supports working with our youth in our schools to keep them safe from drugs and smoking and all those things. And then by our local chapter of the Heart Association. So I really think that what I'd like to do is, we're not making an ordinance tonight. All that we're requesting is that From like our council, our committee, we had a consensus to bring it to our council. And now we're just asking for consensus to send this back to staff to really do a deep dive into the information on looking at what other cities might be doing, to look at what the ordinance might look like, who would monitor it, what would a fine look like, things like that. And so we're just like at the very, very beginning of this, but it's just sending it back to staff so that we can get more information, because it's hard to make a decision when we don't have all this information with us. There will be time after that, once we would get something and have something else to discuss, that we would be doing public comments. So it's not, we're going to be hiding it, doing it somewhere secret. It'll be transparent that you would see it. But I'm just asking for our committee to have consensus to move it forward, just to do some research.
Thank you, Councilmember Garland.
Mayor?
Councilmember Navarro?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, Councilman Garland said it all. It's really just to get our information, our data, our facts right. We do have a community that brought this to our attention. It's our due diligence, just like we've done in the past, to bring these issues up and to make sure that we look into what we can do to, first of all, make our kids safe in this community, and make sure that access to anything that might have any health impact to those individuals, to try to help those resources to make sure that they get mitigated and we do the right thing. So once again, this is an information that we want to dive deeper into. We want the council to hopefully support our research and to answer these questions that were brought here tonight, and to make sure that we can do something that is what our community wants.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. So it sounds like the request from Councilmembers Garland and Navarro is just to go back and allow for staff to do some additional staff research and look into a potential ordinance, but they're looking just to gather information about this issue based on something that was brought forward by a number of people in the community. I'll look to the rest of council to see if that's acceptable, to let them move forward, and I'll let staff continue to do some research and bring something back.
Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor Keating.
Mayor, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Is this Robin?
Yes.
Hey, Mayor. I appreciate that you guys going through that and bringing it forward to the council. I don't think there's any harm at all to doing a little bit deeper dive and see what some of the concerns are or some of the benefits are. So I do support moving forward and doing a little more investigation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Arredondo Savage. Anyone else? Councilmember Adams?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also am fine with moving forward and doing our research. I think we always want to do a lot of research before we make a big decision like this. So I'm fine with having our staff do a lot of research and moving forward with the investigation and the fact-finding on this issue. Thank you for bringing it forward. Councilmember Garland and Councilmember Navarro.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Adams. Any other council members?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cubie.
Yes, I'm fully in support, and I realize this is sort of a change to the work plan, and that I fully support that. And there were some misstatements of fact. I'm glad we heard that mentioned, because when I brought up T21, trying to do it locally at first, there was a lot of objection from the industry. So the statement that T21 was not opposed by industry just simply wasn't true. So, but there's a lot of research to be done, and I really salute council members Navarro and Garland for starting on this path, and thank you very much for your work.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. And I'm also in favor of letting the committee move forward to get additional information and let staff take a look. I mean, we obviously won't know until we get that information back. So I'm definitely in favor of pretty much anything moving forward to at least get some additional information. So I appreciate the work that Councilmember Garland, you and Councilmember Navarro have done on this issue. So thank you. All right. So you have direction to move forward. Next up, I'm going to go to item 4B, council committees in progress. Does any council member like to provide an update on any of their committee work?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, I will.
Yes, Councilmember Cubie, please.
So thanks. I know we all had agreed to sort of give quarterly updates at work study sessions. So on the heel of Braden's presentation, just wanted to briefly update you on the Sustainable and Livable Communities Committee. And the bulk of our work plan has been focused on supporting the development and implementation of the Climate Action Plan update. And we've had a lot of detailed presentations on green stormwater infrastructure, resiliency hubs, and work that staff is already doing to pilot elements of the Green Construction Code in city buildings. And at October's committee meeting, Community Development Department asked us to update you and mention that we're looking at potential code changes involving things like solar readiness and electric vehicle readiness. I know we're all excited about funding that might come from the infrastructure bill that passed and possibly from reconciliation, but there's just been a great movement and shift and an acceptance that electrification is in our future. So, and all of this would help us to meet our energy goals. So, but more specifically, what we've been exploring as part of our work plan that was approved in February, electric vehicle ready code that will support this growing shift among consumers towards purchasing electric vehicles. And we're just updating you that staff will be researching and reaching out to other cities and such. And we just want to be prepared to offer the changed infrastructure that multifamily housing developments are going to need in order to be able to embrace this electric pathway. Jennifer, did you have anything to add?
I do. Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. First of all, it's a pleasure serving on this committee with you, or subcommittee with you. And so I want to update that in these conversations, there are ongoing conversations and the work exploring those potential code changes, including staff researching model code in other cities so we are aligned as a region, will be happening in the next coming weeks. So we're very excited about that. Any final recommendations would be brought to the full council for consideration in early spring. If anyone has any questions or concern, we'd be happy to discuss them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Adams. Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. I'm just like with the previous item, I'm totally fine with moving forward with staff doing additional research on this. I think it's a very important subject and appreciate the work that you've both done in your committee. So I'm fully supportive of moving forward with that. Councilmember Garland?
I'm completely supportive. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Great job.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Anyone else from council? Comments, questions? All right. Sounds good. Sounds like we have consensus to move forward on that item as well. Thank you so much. Any other council member have any updates on their committee they'd like to provide at this time? Hearing none, the next item on the agenda is future agenda items. Council members may request that an agenda item be added to a future issue review session, and in accordance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law, there should be no discussion on the item other than to clarify the request. Does any member of this council have a future agenda item they'd like added?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Cubie.
So today, my student at ASU at the Global Futures Lab ran a virtual webinar with folks from Phoenix from the Heat Resilience Department to discuss heat-ready communities. And the subject came up. Mark Stapp, who's at least Emerald Program Masters of Real Estate Development at ASU, he brought up that low-hanging fruit is it's harder to get new developments to put in increased amounts of shade, but there are commitments that were made in previous development agreements to have shade, and sometimes those trees die and they don't get replaced. And he said that was really the low-hanging fruit, and sort of called on cities to use code compliance to require and make sure that commitments made have been maintained over the years. And I know we started on that road, we started on that pathway, and when we do have our code compliance report, I'm not sure when that's coming back. I just want to see what progress we've made in trying to ensure that there's business compliance, that multifamily developments that agreed to those landscaping requirements have indeed fulfilled those requirements and haven't let the trees kind of go by attrition. We know there's a lot of attrition with our tree canopy, and we've had numerous complaints from residents living in multifamily housing about trees that are dying and not being replaced. So I don't know if this is a new presentation I'm requesting or when Jeff Temulevich presents on code compliance generally, we could hear what the update is, and if we need to give more council priority to this issue, I'd be interested in discussing that.
Sounds good. Thank you, Councilmember Cubie. Councilmember Navarro?
Thank you, Mary. I'd like to second that. I think that for a number of years, we've been talking about this and then also talking about what are we doing on the replacement plan. I know we had some discussion in the past. It's been hard possibly to have the funding or to finance those things when there's other things that are going on. So I encourage you who have still not filled out your little $100 sheet that this is part of the appearance of Tempe and the right-of-ways. So take a look at that. But yeah, not only for the private properties that have to abide by the code, but the city itself, because in our right-of-ways, we have dying trees that are not being replaced also.
Yes, Councilmember Adams.
I'm proud to say that I already filled out my survey, and that was a priority. So got you covered. Let's make these right-of-ways look good again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. All right. Let's see, Mr. City Manager, I guess we could have that agendized for a future meeting.
Absolutely, thank you.
Sounds good. All right. Any other council members, any future agenda items?
Mayor, I had one this morning, but forgot it. Can I add one like when I think of it, or does it have to be right now?
It would need to be right now before we move on to the next item.
Can we hold the meeting?
Yeah, I put Vice Mayor Keating's future agenda item hold on the agenda. I'll think of it for the next one then, but this morning it was really important to me, so thank you.
Where were you this morning when it became important, Randy?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Keating.
Because I thought it was 2 council members could put something on the agenda for a future time.
Well, I mean, for this one, I mean, I mean, if anyone, anyone can throw out any item that they have for a future agenda item at this point.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I can't think of it. Let me search the old noodle up here and see what I can come up with.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Vice Mayor Keating. Anyone else from council? Anything else you'd like to have added to a future agenda? All right, hearing none. The next item on the agenda is the mayor's announcements, city manager's announcements. I don't have any announcements. Mr. City Manager, do you have any?
No announcements. Happy Thanksgiving.
All right, yes, that's a great one. Next up, we have item number 7, which is the next meeting date, which is December 16th, 2021. That'll be our last work study of the calendar year. And with that, we are adjourned at 6:10 p.m. Thank you so much, everyone.